Audio's going.
Audio
Got the
is
Steam
going.
Deck.
Steam Decks, dog. We're
Plural,
decking.
baby. Deck the halls, baby.
All right. Let's do this. Okay. What is up, guys? My name is Tyler, and today I'm in a very special place. I am at my best friend Tyler's house, and we are doing a very little special video. If you guys haven't noticed, I've been doing some very different kinds of videos the end of this year, just kind of playing around with some different ideas. And so yeah, this is kind of another one of those videos where we're just having fun hanging out. But today we're going to talk about handhelds, a lot about the Steam Deck. I haven't done a full review of the OLED yet, but stay tuned for that. And Tyler is kind of my Steam Deck expert that I've known, and he's the one that kind of sparked my interest in the Steam Deck originally. So I'm going to let him introduce himself as well as where we are and sort of the cool little project that he's been working on.
All right. Well, I am also Tyler. I've known Tyler for most of our life, 2/3 of our life now, I think, 20 years pretty much on the dot at this point. And so we've known each other a lot. We've grew up. We have the same interests, all that sort of things. And today we're here to talk about one of those interests, which is gaming and handhelds. But we both do videos. We both make content. Currently, my big endeavor is I started a podcast with another one of our friends, the Off Angle Podcast. It's branded as a movie podcast. So for at least half of the runtime, we do talk about movies, but the rest of it is just us just talking about whatever. It could be gaming, could be anime, could be Steam Decks, whatever. We're just silly boys. If you like Tyler's content or sense of humor, you'd probably enjoy our podcast as well, because that's why we're friends, because we're all silly boys. So
Correct.
That's what I've been doing. It's been fun, and that's why this is the set, essentially, the off-angle sets.
Literally, the context is, I had texted him because I live in Florida now, and so when I came home for Christmas this year, I texted him dude, let's make something together. It's been, I don't know, we've worked together on other jobs, freelance jobs together.
Yeah.
And we make stuff for our clients, but we've never, it's been how many years do you think since we've made something for ourselves?
Yeah.
Probably.
I think it was,
the
probably like we did when I was making the little wallet game videos. You helped me with that. And maybe I helped you with something after that, something little on your channel I was probably in.
I think it was the Monster ad was probably the last thing that we collectively worked. And then the games, which were shortly after that, I believe, was the Pocket.
And then I helped you
games.
a little bit when you did something about that backpack you had.
That's right. We did.
Yeah.
It was the What's in Your Bag.
Yeah,
we did that 2 years ago.
Right.
That's what it was. So that was probably the last piece of content we worked on together was the What's in Your Bag 2021.
Yeah. And even that, nothing substantial.
That wasn't a super creative video. That was very much just hey, you have a bag full of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at our bags of stuff together. So today, the ultimate goal with this video is to sort of answer the age-old question in the last, couple of years now is what kind of handheld should you buy, I guess, in 2023/2024. Now, we don't know what 2024 is going to bring for handhelds. Obviously, I'm assuming we're going to see some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I am excited that handhelds have kind of taken over the gaming laptop market. So less and less you're seeing less and less gaming laptops and more gaming handhelds. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of reverting back to our old ways of Game Boy, DS, PSP, those days, which Tyler and I have wonderful stories about. The first time getting a PSP and all that jazz.
Life-changing.
Literally life-changing. And so it's cool that at our age that handhelds are coming back in style, if you will, at least for PC gaming, which is something that we all transitioned from. Of course, most of us were a console gamer for the longest time, and then now we're all PC gamers, and now I guess we're handheld gamers.
Hell yeah.
Cloud streaming gamers. So anyway, the idea is kind of to give you guys a good sense of what kind of handheld should you buy in 2023-24 from people who are gamers, have always been gamers, and have gamed in many different forms and fashions over the years, with wildly varying budgets from the very top to the very bottom. Between the two of us, we're pretty well versed in, what we think you should buy. So Tyler, I guess I kind of gave our background in gaming, but I just want you to tell us what kind of, because this is, I think, something that's really important to picking which handheld you want to buy, is what kind of games do you like to play?
So I am not your traditional gamer. the Call of Duties or the AAA games. Like, I keep up with them. I like to see what's coming out. I have a lot of interest in seeing what is being released and what people are playing, but I don't particularly myself very often buy AAA games. One, it's expensive to keep up with all the AAA titles coming out, but also just, I don't know, it's not my vibe usually. I like the smaller indie games. I play a lot of indie games, a lot of like roguelikes. I like to keep an eye on party games to play with like my family or getting a group of friends together and playing party games. Just a lot of the like, just lighter games, things that are only going to be a gig or two at most, Just because time is so limited, we're busy adults, I usually like games where I can jump in and out, maybe just do a quick little run or, just play for a few minutes and not have to get super invested and like, oh, what did I do last time? Where did that story leave off? Those 500-hour RPGs and things of that nature. I get why people like them, but they're not for me. I like the easier to consume types of games. And so that's kind of where I'm at and why handhelds work quite well, because they are very suited for those types of games.
They lend themselves very well to, simple indie style games where you can kind of like you said, do like a run, It's very much like, oh, I have 30 minutes to kill. Let me grab my whatever handheld and like do a run of whatever it is. I feel like Binding of Isaac was a big one for us.
Yeah. That was kind of like what got me into the rogue
genre?
Light. Roguelike?
Oh,
roguelite. Yeah, two different kinds.
Yeah.
But yeah, that genre was definitely Binding of Isaac, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people.
So, interestingly enough, I am actually kind of, at least for the longest time, and to some degree still am, kind of the opposite gamer than you, where I'm definitely a graphics person. Like, I like games that push the boundaries of the technology that's available at the time. So like when Control came out, I was all about it because it had real-time ray tracing. It was one of the first titles that really took advantage of all of the ray tracing technologies that were coming out at the time. As well as, I don't know if, I want to say Control had the original DLSS. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I know they just updated it for the newer DLSS, but stuff like that. So I've always been into high fidelity, high graphics games that were like melt your computer kind of thing, simply just for the sake of the fact that they could do it. And like, I don't know, there was something about that. And even to this day, like Alan Wake 2, like some of you saw my NVIDIA GeForce Now video where like Alan Wake 2 is one of those games again, where they're pushing the boundaries. Cyberpunk, another one, right? Where it was like, I love being immersed in just the crazy I will literally spend 10 minutes in a game looking at my reflection in Alan Wake 2 because I find it so fascinating that we've managed to recreate this real-time lighting and all these conditions. Because like, I'm a camera nerd, right? Like, it's just what, I don't know. I've always been obsessed with like how the appearance of things. However, that being said, over time, as I've gotten older and become more busy, like Tyler said, indie games have become more of a favorite of mine for exactly the same purpose. I have a hard time jumping into a Baldur's Gate 3 or a Cyberpunk or an Alan Wake 2 or Starfield, great example, and actually spending the amount of time it takes to get the effect. I just don't have the attention span more than, if anything, it's not even that I don't have the time. Like I actually probably do have the time. I can't stay focused on it long enough. Like if I sit down for a play session, I have to play through like 80% of the game or else I'm not going to come back to it.
Right.
I don't care how gripping it was. I don't care how good it was. I don't care how good it looked. I probably won't come back. And that's not to say that the game isn't good. That's just a me thing.
Yeah. Well, because it's also like if you leave a game and come back with something like that, you have to like flip this switch and like put yourself back into that mindset of that game.
The universe.
It's not just like, oh, let me hop in and casually play. It's like, let me switch into Alan Wake mode and get back in.
Got to be in the mood for it. Yeah. And so with that, our choices and what we would pick for handhelds are very different in some instances. So with that being said, what do you think in your mind, what are the main things, what makes a good handheld, right? I can't think of the word. What are the main things that a handheld has to have, not would like, but like has to have in your head for you to want to not only buy it, but pick it up and actually use it?
Right. I mean, I prioritize just Well, ease of use across the board. If I do want to just quickly hop into a game, I want to be able to quickly hop into a game. I don't have to tinker or anything. I want things to just work. Obviously, affordability is very important. That was one of the first reasons the Steam Deck was the first one I purchased, because it was the first one under $1,000 basically, but it was also half of that. It was very affordable given what it is. But I do also like the opportunity to tinker around with things. I do like to mod things or add plugins, like customize it to suit my needs and, break it a little bit, like do things that I didn't expect it to do, kind of push the boundaries of what it can do. Also, portability to an extent is important, which is why I love a handheld over a gaming laptop or something like that. That's, clearly hefty, going to weigh down my bag. And also the catalog, of course, like what I can play on it, whether that's in terms of performance or just what physically, like Switch, I can only play Nintendo games. Xbox, I can only play Xbox games. Like a Steam Deck and other handhelds, I can play just about anything I can think of that isn't a console exclusive. So definitely the catalog is extremely important as well. And since I don't care as much about the AAA games and next-gen graphics and pushing the envelope of my frames per second, the performance obviously is important, but the threshold for what meets what I need is not as high as it might be for some other computer gamers, especially.
Yeah, I think that as a gamer, there's like a couple different kinds of gamers out there where it's like, oh, like I'm a fidelity, like graphics person. I'm always going to prioritize the appearance of the game over pretty much everything else. That's just what I like, right? Like I want to play a game that is pretty to me. It's the same principle of like, if I'm ever going to read a book, which I don't read, if I read a book, I want it to have pictures and I want it to be colorful, or I want the art to be a specific, eye-catching. It's hard for me to want to read a book that is just text, as silly as that might sound. That's how I am with games. Like I want my games to be very vibrant or like have a very particular art style, something that's very like attractive to me. And I'm okay with playing it at 45 frames a second, which I found out a good friend of mine, Timo at DeckVerse, shout out to DeckVerse. He came up, or as far as I'm aware, kind of came up with this idea of like the golden frame rate is like 45 FPS. And he's kind of right and I didn't think about it until I had seen him talking about it. And I was like, yeah, 60 FPS is great. But coming from the film side, coming from the video side, like 60 FPS looks weird to me.
Yeah.
As strange as that sounds. So for storytelling games like Alan Wake or any of the games like that are more a little cinematic, more story driven, I'm okay with 45 frames per second because at that rate, it gives you enough FPS that you can still shoot stuff and be accurate, but it's not so much FPS that it like feels non-cinematic anymore. Like you lose the movie aspect of it. Like I'm taken out of the world because when I see 60 FPS footage, it doesn't hit the same. And I know there are other gamers out there that are all about FPS, purely performance, right? They want every game, like my brother's like that, right? My brother will tank his graphic settings to get the game to run at 200 frames a second. So it's like, imagine playing Alan Wake 2 at 300 frames a second, but it looks like, polygons are moving around this, literal, just straight up triangles moving around the screen.
But they're so smooth.
And he's just so accurate, And I think that has a lot to do with like competitive gaming versus like leisure gaming.
Yeah.
Tyler and I aren't very big like PvP gamers anymore, I would say.
Stresses me out.
It's very stressful. We don't have the time for it,
Yeah. Plus, all these kids these days are
they're
better
so
than me,
much
man.
better than us.
It's not worth it.
But the co-op games like couch co-op, split screen, online, local, like private co-op games where we play together, obviously we love that.
Yeah.
So I guess in that same vein, like for me, what makes a good handheld, and you guys have heard me say this a few times, is it getting as close to that console-like experience as possible. Because I think up to this point, all the handheld gaming machines we've had, Game Boy, DS, PSP, whatever, what have you, they're all very console experiences, right? Like you said, Nintendo handhelds only played Nintendo games. And now I'm going to go ahead and just, take the whole modding stuff out of the conversation for now, just because obviously, and we talked about this prior to recording, like you could turn anything into anything. Like we understand that. Like, oh, you could make your Steam Deck run Windows. You can make your Windows handheld run Linux or Steam OS, whatever. You could put Steam OS on your phone. I don't care. Yes, we're aware that you could do that, but the average person isn't going to do that, right? And that's kind of the answer the question we want to answer is, which handheld should you buy for someone who just wants to play their games? And I think as nerdy as we might be and really want to dive into the really nitty gritty wild stuff you can do with the Steam Deck or any handheld, at the end of the day, the goal is to play the games, right? So that's what we're kind of going to stick to. So for me, like Tyler said, portability is a big one for me because I travel a lot. And so some of the handhelds like the Lenovo Go, if you haven't seen that video, you should check that out. They're just too big. They're way too big. And I almost start calling them entertainment systems, not handhelds, because some of them don't even lend themselves well to being a handheld device. It's almost like they want you to use it for something else.
Yeah.
You know? And for the longest time when I got my first Steam Deck, I felt like it was a little big. And to some extent, it is a little big. But after holding the Lenovo Go, I'm like, actually, the Steam Deck's not that big. You know?
It's bigger than other handhelds that were before it, but it's small. Handheld computers.
Yes, exactly. And so, so portability is a big one. The other thing is software. Software to me, just with my educational background, I went to school for IT and information systems and used to do software. So like for me, software is a big one. And like Tyler said, this kind of goes in the same vein of like tinkering.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to tinker with stuff. I know how to. I know, and someone's criticized me several times about like, oh, like my 7-year-old nephew knows how to use Windows. And it's like, it's not that I don't know how to use Windows.
Yeah.
I know how to use Windows. I just don't want to have to deal with Windows, right? That's the thing. I want a software experience that lends itself well to playing video games. That's what I want it for. So when I grab it and I turn it on, I want to be able to jump right into my game, right? The software should prioritize getting me into the game faster and more efficiently than anything else, right? And some handhelds, I don't feel like do that very well. And Windows handhelds specifically, I don't feel like do that very well. No matter what software skin they want to throw on top of it, like Lenovo has Space and ASUS has Armory Crate, they just don't do it for me. And so Steam, in my opinion, after coming back to it, SteamOS is still the king in the software department, I think. They've nailed the idea of making their own operating system. Whereas Lenovo and ASUS, they don't own Windows. So the best they can do is just to throw a skin over top of it and hope that that takes care of it. But at the end of the day, you're still dealing with Windows, which is always my biggest gripe with Windows handhelds, is like when it works, it's great. It's faster, more powerful than the Steam Deck, higher resolution. It's all the things you could ever ask for. But getting there is usually a hassle. You usually have to tinker with stuff. And sometimes it's just not worth it. Like to me, like you said, I don't want to have to tinker with it. And all my Windows handhelds I've used, it's never quick. It's never pull it out of my bag, turn it on, and jump into game. It takes me well over 5 to 10 minutes to finally get the game to launch. Yeah. I mean, how many times have you been on a gaming desktop, Windows, launch a game for the first time, and it launches in some weird disjointed window and nothing's working right. The shit's everywhere. You got to go into your settings and like, I just got to fix the set.
Update a driver.
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I know how to.
Yeah.
But the last thing I want to do when I've got 30 minutes to play a game in the airport or wherever is, again, we're talking about getting in that mindset. I shouldn't have to get into a mindset to pull out my handheld to play a game.
Yeah, it's like mentally prepare yourself.
Mentally prepare myself for, I'm going to turn this on and hope to God there isn't Windows updates and I don't have an internet connection right now or whatever the case. If you have a Windows handheld, you know what I'm talking about. I don't care how tech savvy you are. It's annoying sometimes, right? And there's the trade-off. It's like, is it worth it? Is it worth the 20 minutes of like messing with it and tinkering with it to get it to play the game a little faster than the Steam Deck at a little bit of a higher resolution?
Yeah.
Is it beautiful? Is it awesome? Yes. 100%. Like when I got the ROG Ally, I was like, yo, this is way better than the Steam Deck. And in some areas it is. But using it long term, I don't go for the Ally because I know what I'm getting into. I know I'm going to have to deal with something. And while the Ally, I think, is a much better Windows handheld than the Lenovo was, and probably still, I think, is probably one of the better Windows gaming handhelds for a number of reasons, I still don't find myself wanting to grab it as much anymore.
Yeah, and that's always the most important part. The handheld that's best is the one you want to actually
use. It's the one you use. and I've said this on my videos before too. I've got lots of friends that do benchmarks and do the whole 9 yards. Benchmarks are extremely important. Like, we need to understand the performance that we're getting. Obviously, you need to know what you're paying for. However, I don't care how fast or badass it is. If I don't want to use it, what good is it? Who cares at that point? And that's the big thing with, I think, what's brought me back to Steam Deck is that, yeah, it's a lower res screen. Yeah, I'm not playing at the highest quality settings, but I've spent more time enjoying it. And isn't that,
Yeah.
To me, that's what's most important, the experience. And you guys have heard me say that a lot. It's like, what's the best experience? And so I think so far, software, again, just kind of bring it back. Software makes or breaks a handheld experience today. You could have the best controls and sticks and this and Hall effect, this, that, the other, touch pads, touch screen. I don't give a whatever. If the software is bad and I don't want to use it, forget about it. It might as well be a glorified controller at that point. So anyway, I think those are kind of my major things. Like performance, like you said, yes, more performance is great.
Yeah. Battery
Battery life is great. But at the end of the day, like when I buy a handheld like this, I'm already prepared to plug it into the wall frequently. It's like a gaming laptop. I look at these like gaming laptops. I don't buy a gaming laptop expecting crazy battery life.
Yeah. There's certain drawbacks that are going to come with the form factor.
So like, yeah, battery life is important, but also it's not a make or break for me. Same with performance. Now, with a gaming laptop is a little different. I would say on a handheld, performance is going to depend on what kind of games you want to play.
Yeah.
When it comes to indie games, obviously they all run really well because they're indie games. Now, when it comes to like AAA titles, originally, I would say the Windows handhelds had it beat because for AAA titles like Cyberpunk or any of those bigger type Call of Duty, things like that, they obviously ran much better, if at all, on the Windows machines. But what's changed since then is that Steam has done such a great job, and the devs for that matter, have done such a great job adding more and more titles to Steam Deck Verified that I am like, well, the things that made me want to use the Windows handhelds are starting to go away, right? Because if the games that I only could play on my Windows handheld are now becoming verified on Steam Deck, I'll let you do the simple math, I guess, of like, why wouldn't I just play them on the Steam Deck then, right?
Yeah, Valve's like really paying attention because you'll see like an update note. In the update notes, it's like, oh, we fixed the crash in the newest Alan Wake game that people were experiencing. Like if someone's experiencing issues with a game that just came out, like, all right, well, we can fix that. Like they're actively making it the best experience possible for the titles that you can play. If it can't be played on it, they're going to try to find a way to allow it to be played. Even if you got to maybe turn down the resolution or something, it'll work.
I love seeing... when I got Cyberpunk recently, when I got this one, I loved seeing that Cyberpunk now has a graphic preset for Steam Deck.
That's awesome.
Like it literally is just like low, medium, high, ultra ray tracing Steam Deck. It's literally titled, it's a graphical preset in the game called Steam Deck. And I don't know why that's like so cool to me, but it just goes to show like it's a two-way, waves, baby. Yeah, it's a two-way street. Like, right, Valve is like, cool, like, guys, we have this program. We recommend making your game Steam Deck verified.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Devs, I think, know now that, like, if it's not playable on Deck, that actually eliminates a lot of people from the demographic. A market. They're going to play it.
Yeah, there's a market for this handheld PC gaming now that devs that have the capability to do so. I mean, Christ, games like Dave the Diver, or Vampire Survivors, those are verified on Deck. Yeah. And they're not big titles. They're not multi-million, billion-dollar companies, publishers, whatever. They're verified on Deck. You know what I'm saying? Because they know the value. Because they themselves, those devs are probably handheld gamers. They want their game. They know that a large chunk of their market will probably be on a handheld now. So yeah, I think for me, to keep it simple, software and portability are kind of my two main things. I mean, controls is a third one. I think the controls like the thumbsticks, the D-pad,
just like the ergonomics.
The ergonomics I think is important. However, I've dealt with worse. Like no offense to the Backbone, but like compared to handhelds, like it's not fair to compare the two. But like just as an example, like okay, Joy-Con, that's a better example actually. Joy-Cons or the backbone for your phone, those devices are so thin and so small that for larger hands, especially if you have larger hands, you know what I'm talking about, the ergonomics just don't even exist. Like the Razer Kishi.
Yeah.
Ergonomics are such a last, it's like those don't matter as much. But for a device like this, it does start to matter a little bit more. And I will say the Steam Deck is, I think, the best middle ground. I think that the Lenovo Legion Go, if it didn't have 5 billion buttons on it, would be the most comfortable because it's just the biggest and it fills your hands the most.
Uh-huh.
The Ally, I would say, is the opposite. It's on the bottom because it is so thin. It's more of a slate, and it's got these angled edges on it. It's very ASUS ROG, their classic architecture, their design.
Yeah.
Holding it, though, it doesn't fill your palms very well. And that's the part. My hand actually hurts holding the Ally.
Which is not something you want from a handheld device.
Especially when you're playing for 2 hours plus.
Yeah.
Now, the Steam Deck, I think, is the perfect middle ground at the moment where it does fill your hands enough that it feels comfortable. And they don't overwhelm you with a billion buttons like the Legion Go. So I think, and having trackpads are nice. I never really use mine on the Steam Deck. I like having them. I think it is convenient. And the ones on the Steam Deck are actually quite good in comparison.
If you want to use them, they work. If anything, usually because you can also like set it as like a D-pad almost. I've done that. But yeah, I haven't like played an FPS game with a trackpad or something.
But
and
it's like, with the Windows handhelds, I feel like a trackpad is almost required in order to even like enjoy it. Now the Ally doesn't, but where Asus was smart with the Ally was in Windows, the right joystick lets you move the mouse. Okay. That's genius because if you've played Destiny or whenever that became popular, video games that have a cursor that let you move around.
Yeah.
I feel like Destiny is like really what popularized that. It works great in Windows. Like that's why I think I liked the Ally so much because it made dealing with Windows on a controller usable because everyone knows that historically Windows has never had a good touchscreen experience, period. And it still doesn't. Like I don't care who you are. If you think using Windows on a touchscreen is like a good experience, you're crazy, dog. Because I just think it could be so much better. In any case, so yeah, those are kind of the major things that I think what makes a good handheld. So with that, I know we've talked a lot about Steam Deck. So why don't you tell me about the Steam Deck? Kind of like when you heard about it, what kind of what piqued your interest about it? Tell me kind of like that little journey, if you will.
Yeah, so I just growing up, like some of my favorite memories are with you and our other friends is playing those games together in the same room, split screen gaming, co-op, Halo campaigns, and all that fun stuff. Spicy.
Look. So
he's crying because it's bringing
so
up
emotional. I know I have a monster on the table, which is so classic for me. And I know this looks like this has Monster in it. It actually has whiskey in it. And it happens to be a very spicy whiskey.
My man's crying over here.
And I was just hoping that he wouldn't notice because like now I've got tears in my eyes.
It's impossible to ignore.
He's over there telling like this emotional story. We're like, yeah, dude, I miss
the
that,
good old days, man.
The good old days. Drink some more. It went down the wrong pipe. All right, guys. Just
oh, damn. Burning your lungs now.
Woo. All right. Continue.
Yeah, so we would do a lot of, co-op gaming and split screen gaming. And then, naturally people move or we just got access to computers and good internet. So then we played everything online and, that was fun and we could play a lot more games. But now we don't have that option because we don't live together near each other. But also people don't even make those anymore. Like Xbox and PlayStation and stuff, they don't even have split screen anymore. It's almost a dead art form other than like certain party games. So I really was trying to always capture that. So I would look into like emulation and when the Switch came out, the Switch was great because obviously a lot of Nintendo games are good for playing in groups like Mario Party and that sort of thing. And so I was always just finding ways to capture that local multiplayer experience. And so for a while it was trying to like remote desktop into my computer and play it that way. Then the Switch came out and I was using the Switch and could take that places and play Jackbox games and that sort of thing. And then I was trying to figure out what can I emulate on. I started bringing a laptop around and have to plug in like 6 adapters and wired controllers and all of this stuff just to play an emulated Nintendo 64 game for 10 minutes while my computer is like crying and the fans are spinning up. It just wasn't efficient. So when the Steam Deck came out, which I'm already deep in the Steam ecosystem, I have like 400 plus games on Steam. It was exactly what I wanted. And not only can I play my arguably my whole Steam library just about. I could also emulate things. It's also affordable. It's also portable. It's all like everything I was looking for all in one system. And I have never looked into any of Valve's other hardware endeavors. I know they've had other things like the Steam Link, and I think they had Steam Machines.
Steam Box, I think it was
something.
Steam,
yeah.
It was an Alienware. They had done like an Alienware collab.
Yeah.
The Steam Box. Maybe I'll throw it up on the screens if you guys don't know what it is. And the Steam controller. And they have tried several times because NVIDIA had done the Shield TV, and it was a box.
Yeah.
Because you had one for a while.
Yeah,
I had the Shield tablet back when that was a thing. I remember getting that too. So I think Valve at the time was like, hey, like we have probably, and probably still to this day, the best online video game store, period. Right. Or launcher, if you will, whichever you want to call it. Both. Honestly, it's a marketplace and a launcher. So we need to make a piece of hardware around it to sell the full experience. Valve is like, hey, like we have one major component. We need to sell the other component, right? So that someone could just have a full, it's like, I always say it's like the Apple experience, right? Apple was like, cool, we make phones. Well, let's make laptops, or I guess the other way around, sorry. We make computers, let's make phones, mobile computers, let's make tablets, let's make this, let's make TV boxes. Apple kind of wants to own the experience start to finish when it comes to, computing. And they want you to use all their products. And naturally, when you use a MacBook and an iPhone and a Mac and this and that, it all seamlessly works together. I feel like Valve is kind of going that same route right now where they're like, well, we own the biggest store for video games now that like GameStop and Fry's and all these other, whatever game stores aren't as popular, if not even in business anymore. So they're like, cool, well, we need to own the experience end to end. Well, they're not going to make PCs because getting into the PC industry is probably insane.
Yeah.
So making a handheld, I feel like was, for them, like like I said, they did the box, but that's why they collabed with Alienware.
Yeah.
Alienware made Dell, made the hardware. Valve put their stamp on it. Whereas with the Steam Deck, I feel like was probably the first time where they were like, no, like we're going to design the hardware. We're going to design everything in it. We're going to work with AMD to make a specialized processor just for our device.
Yeah. And
I don't know if you guys know this, but like when you take apart the Steam Deck, the chip, the die for the processor actually has the Valve logo etched on it because they are Valve chips, more or less. AMD makes them, but they were tuned and built for the Steam Deck. Because the Windows handhelds that I have, the Ally and the Go, also have AMD chips, the AMD Z1 Extreme, which you guys have heard me tout a bunch. Still a phenomenal chip. If they put a Z1 Extreme chip in one of these, wow, dude, that would send it to the next level. And honestly, I think if we see a Steam Deck 2 next year or the year after,
I'm sure they'll
I
put
think
it
that's
in there,
the
whatever the current
the
best
next
chip is.
evolution, if they're not already working on the next evolution of the chip. But in any case, like this is, I see Valve doing the same thing. And I think that's why, generally speaking, for the masses, for the normal consumer, that isn't tech savvy. That's what I'm going to like be very specific here. That isn't a tech savvy person. They could pick. I was able to hand this to my dad, who is relatively tech savvy, but I was able to hand this to my dad, and my dad was able to figure it out within 10 seconds. It made sense to him. Now, you hand someone a Windows gaming handheld, and I feel like if they're not super familiar with Windows, they get a little lost. And I've had some friends that I've shown my Windows handhelds to, and they're like, "This is really cool. How do I play games?" Right? Like they're like, they just want to play games on it, and it's like it's Windows, and if you're not used to using Windows or you haven't used it in a while, it's a lot to take in. Because let's be real, it's actually interesting that a lot of folks don't encounter Windows anymore because they have an iPad or they have their phone.
Yeah, and a lot of gamers these days are usually on consoles. So it's, they're not used to that.
They're not used to having to use Windows to play a video game. And so, yeah. But yeah, so Tyler, obviously, Steam Deck got announced. He got super stoked about it because it checked all of his boxes. Not only did he buy one for himself, he bought two because he was smart enough. He had the foresight to know that one of us in the group, one of us in the friend group, would probably want one. And he, naturally, I was the one who took him up on the offer because he had done such a good job selling it to me when he came over the one time and had it with him.
Yep. And you're also one of our friends that's the most impulsive with their buying
I am
decisions.
extremely impulsive. That's
Not that you regret it, clearly, but...
No, I don't. But that's, if you guys haven't told, I'm very impulsive, which is why I started a tech review channel, because I figured if I'm going to be impulsive and buy random tech things, I might as well make content out of it. You know what I mean? But yeah, he had brought it over one day, and here I am gaming on my, whatever PC. I think I was showing him Star Citizen. And I remember you parseced from your Steam Deck into your desktop here and played Star Citizen on the Steam Deck. I think you may have been the first person to play Star Citizen on the Steam Deck.
True. I might hold that title.
That little title. But yeah, so like him showing it to me and like me kind of playing with it. Cause like he'll tell you, like, I wasn't sold on it. Like I knew it was coming out. I had no interest in buying it because I knew that it wasn't going to have the performance of a gaming PC. I knew that it wasn't going to play the games that I normally would play, right? Like I said, I love high fidelity, high graphics games. Like the way it was described to me and the way I saw it at the time, because how long has it been out? Like 2 years now? When did it come out?
So I got mine May 20th, 2022. It's a lot of twos. I think it came out.
That's my birthday.
Yeah, it came out like maybe like a month before that or something. I wasn't in the first wave.
February 2022. The original Steam Deck was launched February 2022 and included a custom AMD APU, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's been a little over a year now. Actually, almost 2 years because February is coming up. So it's been almost 2 years. And so back then at the time, the way that the Steam Deck looked to me, it looked like another one of Valve's like, hey, we're trying hardware again. This would be like the second or third time that they've like tried to push out a Steam box or a Steam this or Steam that. And none of those other products ever interested me, I guess, because it just seemed like...
and none of them did like extremely well either. So like, you're still kind of taking a gamble. And with this, it wasn't like they announced it and it's like, here, check out all these tech YouTubers that are reviewing it. You had to place your pre-order like 6 or 7 months in advance of the product even coming out, which I did. But it was, a complete gamble.
So I found it. It was called a Steam box, and it was with Alienware. I'm on a Polygon. I don't know if it's a review or what, but Valve revealed 13 different Steam machines, ranging in price from $499 to $6,000. I couldn't imagine buying a $6,000 Steam box. In any case, Valve had done the Steam box prior. And it ran SteamOS. I think it was ahead of its time. I think what Valve had created that was good was SteamOS. That's what they were most proud of. That was their actual product.
Yeah.
Valve is a software company, not a hardware company, right? And I think that's really important. Same with Google. Google's in the same vein, right? Google is a software company that happens to now make hardware. Right. So when Google finally launched their own phone, the Google Pixel, obviously it was really good, but it was really good not because it had the best cameras hardware wise or the best materials or the fastest processor.
Yeah.
It was because the software was so perfectly integrated into the hardware.
It could like close the gap on any hardware
exactly
issues
because
the software would make up for it.
Right. You look at someone like a Samsung or any of these other Android brands, they just throw performance at it. More power, more chips, and make it faster and faster. And so at a certain point, the software didn't matter, kinda, because it was like, oh, we'll just throw more performance at it. Yeah. Whereas Apple and like Google and I guess Valve in this case, they're more about, well, hey, like let's just design everything around the software experience, right? And look at Mac, look at Apple when they made their own processors now.
Yeah.
Macs are untouched in certain areas, like in terms of efficiency and like power per watt. It's hard. And I remember trying to convince you to switch to Mac. It was like, it's hard. Like, cause like we grew up hardcore Windows users. Like, screw Mac. I'm never going to switch to Apple. I'm sure you guys always remind me on Facebook. I tweeted I was never going to get an iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's changed because Apple took the step and they're like, no, like we're going to design the whole experience top to bottom. And I feel like Valve is kind of doing the same thing, but for gaming.
Yeah, I think they've always, because that's why I was so confident, is because Valve has always, they want people to play games. They want people to have access to games because Steam, by far is the largest catalog of anywhere, but largest catalog of games, and also the sales. That there's always sales. Like you can get any game for the cheapest price on Steam. Like they just make gaming accessible, not only with physically purchasing and getting the game, but also now playing your games. And with their controller, they want you to be able to play any PC game using a controller because it has like the little trackpads on the controller, the Steam controller. So they have gamers in mind. They're not just, we make computers and let's try to get the gamers in on this too. It's like, no, we want the gamers to be happy.
And we don't know this for sure, but it feels, as an end user, right, as customers, we feel like Valve is run or has gamers on the team.
Yeah.
People that
they started
like us.
with making games, and then Steam came along.
Exactly.
They made
so
Half-Life and all that.
And Counter-Strike and all that. Yeah. So it's like, like you can tell in the product. You can tell like something like a Steam Deck really feels like it was built by a bunch of nerdy gamer guys that were like, well, what do we want? What are we frustrated about? And excuse me. And while, again, Valve is a software company, they have no business touching the hardware world. I think their ability to, or their willingness to just say like, we're gonna make a box, we're gonna make this, and they keep trying the hardware end of it, and then they finally landed at the Steam Deck, last year. I think this is the one that sticks.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's hard to imagine them ditching Steam Deck and be like, that didn't work. I think it works.
Yeah, I mean, they
really
just
well
reinvented it with the OLED version, updated it. And considering, I couldn't even tell you how many other handhelds have come out since the Steam Deck's launch, but it's like these people wouldn't be making them if the Steam Deck wasn't making waves out there, and they're like, we got to get in on this. Like, Valve's onto something here. Yep,
and that's how it is. Like ASUS and Lenovo and I guess Ayaneo to an extent. Ayaneo is in kind of their own little world. I feel like they're a very boutique handheld manufacturer. GDP, I feel like it's kind of like that too, where they're like, hey, we've been doing this for forever. But again, it's like, I think those brands were more of like, they're more boutique, like they were more of a niche audience. The Steam Deck is more of like the mainstream popularizing the idea of a gaming PC handheld. It's not to say that Ayaneo or GDP or any of the other like smaller boutique companies that have been making Windows gaming or Windows PC handhelds for I don't know how long, right? I just don't think that those companies ever were attempting to hit the mainstream audience necessarily.
Yeah.
Not quite like what Valve's trying to do.
It was always about the enthusiasts.
Correct. Great word choice. That's probably the best way to describe it. I think the Steam Deck is the most non-enthusiast exclusive handheld.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a gaming enthusiast or a hardware enthusiast to want or use or buy a Steam Deck.
Yeah,
because it truly is approachable.
Someone like maybe they just play a Switch, or they want to maybe start to dab. Like, what is PC gaming all about? I'm willing to check it out, and they don't want to,
what's
drop
the entry
$1,500
What's
for a
the
gaming
entry
PC.
price? I want you guys to tell me in the comments, what is the entry price for PC gaming today?
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a PC gamer and I told you, I want a gaming PC, what's the entry price? Right? And keep in mind, let's pull it up.
Pretty sure it's $399.
Yeah. So for $400, keep in mind that the Steam Deck is like right there. And tell me why I would pick a gaming PC and not a Steam Deck for any of your normal friends that were like, hey, because we all have had that friend. I know you guys, I know you have, I know I have. You guys have had that friend or whatever, that acquaintance that has come to you because you're the gamer guy at work, or you're the gamer guy in your group, whatever. We've all had that, right? That they come to you and they're like, I want to get into PC game, or my boyfriend wants to get, or my girlfriend wants to get, my brother wants to get into PC game. What do I get?
Yeah.
What do I buy?
What kind of graphics card do I like? You got to answer all these questions.
All these questions are about. Tell me why today in 2023, it is December, so let's say 2023, 2024. Why you wouldn't just tell them to go get a Steam Deck?
Yeah. Because literally, like, not even for gaming, but just buying computers in general. Like, someone will ask me, and I have, like, every time they ask me, I have to do another search. Like, I don't know. What's the current best laptop? What's the current best process? Like, I don't know.
A good gaming PC it's a process.
Yeah.
We've there's options out there, and I recently had someone I went to college with message me on Facebook and be like, hey, like my daughter wants a gaming PC. She's into these games. What do I get? and it's always like, well, you could do this, you could do that. There's so many options. And I think for the normal consumer that's not tech savvy, that isn't an enthusiast, could care less, right? Their only mission is to play a video game. They don't, it's so much easier to just be like, go get a Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Get a Steam Deck.
Again, it's going to be the smoothest transition because you got to sign
so
in,
familiar.
blah, blah, blah. But once you turn it on right there, there's all the games I recently played
so
or installed.
familiar.
I click play or install, and it's right there. It works,
You're not dealing with Windows updates. You're not dealing with driver updates. You're not dealing with some, I don't want to say half-baked because I don't think that's fair, but you're not dealing with a skin or an overlay or a software that's trying to basically shortcut the gaming experience for you to make it simpler.
Yeah.
This truly just is simple.
Yeah.
Because for me, as an enthusiast, as a software guy, as someone who's built and worked on PCs for well over a decade now, I can't stand those little software things because at the end of the day, I know that I'm just dealing with Windows. So I would just rather deal with Windows. So I almost always close or turn off whatever baked in software that runs over top of Windows for these gaming handhelds because quite frankly, in my opinion, no one's done it good yet. No one's really made a good version. Now, you could argue that the Steam Deck and SteamOS is kind of the same thing because you can go to desktop mode because it's Proton, right? Is what is the Linux skin. You could argue so most times Linux is not something you just install and just I'm running Linux. It's usually
that was always the weird black sheep of the bunch.
Yeah.
Linux.
Right.
What's this penguin dude?
Right. And so with Linux though, when you installed it, you were typically running a version or a skin on Linux. So Ubuntu, Red Hat, whatever else. Proton is kind of like Valve's version of Linux. It's kind of skinned in a certain way. Now, obviously, if you don't know, the Steam Deck does have a desktop mode. You can use it like a computer. It is Linux, so it's not going to have.
Yeah, there's definitely some quirks and the shortcuts are a little different.
It's almost uncanny different. It kind of feels like Windows. It feels familiar, but not entirely.
It's like someone tried to build Windows from memory.
From memory, yeah, it's exactly that experience. Build me Windows 11 from memory, and it's kind of it kind of looks like this. So you could argue that SteamOS is like a overlay, but what Steam has done, or what Valve has done rather, is a really good job of separating the two, where if you want to go to desktop mode, it's basically like rebooting the system practically.
Yeah.
It's a whole other side to the Steam Deck. And they've added that, I feel like, personally, for enthusiasts.
Yeah.
They've wanted to add that because they're like, well, hey, we know at the end of the day, SteamOS is just big picture mode running on Linux. We know, because again, the people who designed this are probably enthusiasts. They're like, we know that if we were an enthusiast and we got this device, we would want to tinker with it.
Yeah.
At least have the option to tinker.
Yeah, we want to be able to install some other programs or,
do whatever wild stuff we want to do. So they added the desktop mode as hey, if you're a tinkerer, it's there. You just got to go get it.
Yeah.
I think that's the right approach, right? Focus on the console experience first.
Yeah.
Appeal to the masses where it's I hit 2 buttons and I'm playing a game.
Yeah, but allow the option to go in.
But if you're a tinkerer, tinkerers are going to tinker. That's the whole purpose. If you're a tinkerer, you're going to search and you're going to dive into the settings. You're going to mess with stuff. You're going to find it.
Yeah.
And they didn't make it hard for you to find it. I'm just saying they tucked it away so that as a plain Jane, non-tech savvy gamer, it's not in the way. Whereas Windows doesn't do that. Windows does not really hold your hand.
Yeah.
Windows is Windows. Right? You either know how to use it or you don't. And we all have that friend or family member that somehow still uses a Windows laptop or a computer and there's always something going on with it, right? But there's a reason that that's the case because they're not tech savvy.
But they give us the iOS experience, but they can go to the Android backend and make all
if they want to play around with it. Yeah. And I think that's what I love about this is that this is very console experience driven.
Yeah, they want it to be a console, a handheld console.
I would still say it's not a console because it is a PC gaming machine, right? And there are some quirks about it that do make it a little more, I don't want to say less approachable, but you still there's a bit of a learning curve with this versus a Switch.
Yeah, there
the
are
Switch
a couple.
Is like the simplest of the simple, the Xbox, the PlayStation, they're the simplest of the simple. This is just a step up from that.
Yeah.
It's still very simple. I wouldn't quite call it a console yet.
Yeah.
It's close.
But in terms of PC gaming, it's as easy as
yes,
it can be.
This is the closest to a PC console that we're going to get, Because again, you use those Windows handhelds and it's it's all tinker up front. It's like, yeah, I can get Cyberpunk to run at 60 FPS with max settings if I tinker with 10,000 different things. Oh, well, if you go into the registry and you change these 3 letters in the registry and delete this file and do this and do that and copy paste this file and extract this and put this in there, and then you run the game in administrator mode, and then you do this and set these exact graphic settings, you too can play Cyberpunk at 60 frames per second with max settings. And it's
Hooray.
like, no one's doing that.
Yeah.
Unless you're a tinkerer, right? I love that. I love that that exists. But the Steam Deck lets you do that too.
Yeah.
Because I didn't add this question in there, but like, what have you done to yours? Like, I would love for you, because like, for you guys, so most of you guys know, I have just the plain Jane 1 terabyte limited edition OLED. It's got the
plain
orange.
Jane limited edition super cool version.
It was orange, okay? I had to get it because it was orange. Like, that was literally the only reason I bought it. And I didn't think, so the funny story about the limited edition was like, me and my friend Alex were trying really hard. We were both like watching it. We were like, okay, we're going to try really hard to get this. And I haven't been this nervous since Tony and I went to go get the Xbox One. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, here we go. And I'm like refreshing. And this is like what product launches or game launches, like midnight releases are like in 2023. We're like, we don't go to the store anymore. We just sit online and just refresh.
Come on.
You know, and then
it's
we like,
midnight.
When we get excited, we like tweet about it. We're like, I finally got one. You know what I mean? So
just
like
post a screenshot of your cart.
I literally, and I did. Naturally, the Steam store crashed when this dropped. Everyone was like, you're freaking out.
Yep.
And I eventually got mine. Alex had to wait like 25 minutes. They said sold out. And then like 20 minutes later, it came back. And then Alex was able to get his. Come to find out, these didn't sell out until like last week. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, dude. Like my dad went to look. We were looking at the site yesterday because he bought his from the site.
Yeah.
The limited edition one is now officially sold out. But like, it was still in stock for several days.
It was just the store couldn't even handle it.
No, it was just I don't think it was as limited as people thought. Mm-hmm. Right? Like normally with limited edition like when's the last time you guys saw a limited edition console that was like themed, colored?
Yeah.
Like nowadays it's so lazy. You know, it's like, oh, because like for example, I have the God of War Ragnarok PS5, and if you're my age, if you're our age, you're thinking, oh, dude, that thing's probably sick. It probably looks really cool. No, it's a base PlayStation 5. It just came with the game, which is bullshit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not like themed out. It's not colored. It's not cool. You know what I mean? It's bullshit. This is the first time in a long time where a limited edition console or handheld, whatever, is actually different than the other ones. So you got that translucent black plastic. You got the orange, which obviously I'm a sucker for. It is the 1 terabyte. It shares all the exact same things from the 1 terabyte OLED model. It's just in the special colorway. But like, I miss that because the DS, I feel like, was one of the popular ones. The DS had so many special editions.
Yeah, I feel like Nintendo in general does, because they do some Switches.
The
like
Switches are like that too.
One and
the Zelda one. There's a Zelda one. They do a great job, and I love that because if you're a diehard, like just a big nerdy gamer for whatever game is your favorite, you're buying that.
Yeah.
100%, no questions asked. If you're an diehard Animal Crossing fan, you're buying the Animal Crossing Switch, and you will be ferocious about it.
Yeah, and even just in general, like not even necessarily like special editions, but just they don't even do like color options aren't even a thing anymore with consoles. Like the 360 had black and white at least, but before like the Nintendo 64, you get like translucent controllers.
They had like 9 colors.
It was
What happened, man?
Like a lot of Nintendo, the Game Boys, like everything. It's not like it's that hard.
Nintendo, I think, was probably the best example we have of like limited edition and options when it came to personalizing your console. Because like, how cool is that, guys? Like when you'd show up, I feel like PSP had a white. There was a white one somewhere in there. But like, how cool? Like you might remember this. Like showing up to your friend's house to play Nintendo DS, whatever it is, Picto Chat with each other. You know, your buddy had the black Nintendo DS Lite. Your other buddy had the white one, and this guy had like the limited edition so and so. Or there was a SNES one. Didn't Jason have like a SNES original DS, but it was like skinned like the original SNES? That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have skins and stuff now, but it's
same.
cool to like. This is
because the packaging was it was like it was the packaging. It was it was the experience, right? I feel like the older we get, the less and less the experience seems to matter to a lot of kids or a lot of folks, where it's like they don't care as much. And like, I don't know. I think it's exciting to get a special color, a limited edition of something, because it's like, you only buy it when you're like really passionate about it. And so when you have friends over or whatever, it becomes a talking piece. It's a talking piece. Someone comes over and they're like, whoa, that's a cool PlayStation. You're like, yeah, so it's like the limited edition, blah, blah, blah. So it was cool to see Valve do, long story short, it was cool to see Valve do an actual limited edition that was different than the bunch to make it stand out, make it different. But it's not any better performing. It's not any different. It just looks different. And for me, obviously, you guys know I love the color orange. It's like my thing. Obviously, I was like 100%. And honestly, you guys will get the full review of the OLED here soon, so stay tuned for that. But seeing, because I had an original Steam Deck as well, I actually gave it to one of our friends for Christmas. It's been passed on.
Yeah,
because it was
the one I bought.
The one that he bought. I bought it from him, and now our other friend has it. So, we like to pass it along.
That's how good it is, man.
Yeah. And
you
so,
see it, you want it.
And with that, I also want to like, and I think I've said this in one of my shorts recently. It was like, well, if I have an LCD Steam Deck, should I get the OLED, right? And I think the answer to that is probably no, right? If you're happy with your Steam Deck and you play it and like you're happy with it, there's nothing about it where you're like, man, I really hate this, I really hate that. And the new one, I'm gonna air quote it, the refined one, as I like to call it, the OLED one came out, and you're like, wait, is it better? Like, should I get it? I don't think you need it.
Yeah.
I got it because I'm of the camp of, well, again, I'm a sucker for orange, and again, impulsive buying. I'm of the camp, though, that you really won't notice the difference unless you use them side by side. Yes, the new one is more refined. It has those things. It refined all the things that the original Steam Deck owners were like, man, it's so close. Like, we really just wish it had this and really wish it had this. I think this is much closer to that. But if you have an LCD model, I don't think you're missing anything either. Like, you're not missing out. Like, again, 90 hertz is great, but like we talked about earlier, 45 FPS is plenty. So, and if you're playing a 16-bit indie game or whatever, you're not going to tell the difference between 60 and 90 frames per second anyway. Right. Not in that kind of game.
Yeah.
So I think that if you have an LCD model, stick with the LCD model. Wait till the new one, Steam Deck 2 or Pro, whatever they just, like the Switch, right? I have an original Nintendo Switch. Do you have an OLED, or which one do you have?
Regular, yeah.
Regular one. When the OLED Switch, it's the same principle. When the OLED Switch came out, I was like, I don't feel like I really need it. And I've seen it. I've held it. I've looked at it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. It really does refine the things about the Switch that I didn't like, or not that I didn't like, but that I would have liked to have seen improvements on. But it wasn't something I felt the need to rush out and buy. It was not a substantial enough improvement. It's the same principle with the laptops year over year. I would say skip this one, get the next one. But if you don't have a Steam Deck, let's say you don't have a Steam Deck, don't have a handheld.
There's literally no reason not to get
There's literally no reason not to get the OLED. So if you're on the fence about it because you have an LCD, I say don't worry about it, ignore it. If you don't have a Steam Deck and you've been wanting one, and you're like, well, should I just save a little bit of money and get the LCD? Should I just pull the trigger and get the OLED? I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think pull the trigger and get the OLED. That's a no-brainer. Even if it's $50 to $100 more, I think it's a no-brainer to pull the trigger on an OLED. Yeah, I think we kind of wrapped it up pretty well. I think I'm just going to like more officially wrap it because we kind of covered the last few points.
Yeah. And also want to say just in general that like what I really like about Valve is that everything there's no, like, if I don't have money for the best, like the top of the line one, I'm not like really missing out. It's not like, oh, I can't play the games because I didn't buy the $1,000 version. Like they're making it accessible. They only improve, storage and things. So it's not like if I didn't buy the $500 version. Oh, you mean
like each model?
Yeah.
So like they came out with how many models? Like 3?
They had 3 models, and now they have the OLED ones. And it's not like if I buy the cheapest one, I'm not gonna be able to play some of the games I could have played on the more expensive one. You're only paying for,
storage.
Essentially bells and whistles, with the storage. And I think one has like an anti-glare screen coating, things that don't affect the experience.
The general experience, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that too. I agree with you because I think with regular, any other kind of handheld tech, any tech for that matter, laptops, Apple's kind of similar in that way too, where they kind of bucket their performance, where it's like, okay, this is an M2 MacBook Pro 14 or 16.
Yeah.
And within that bucket, each model does go up in price.
Yeah.
But the difference is not performance necessarily. It's just more storage or more RAM, which I guess probably not the greatest comparison because more RAM does make a difference. In any case, going back to the Steam Deck, like Tyler said, I think that obviously that makes a lot of sense, right? Like my model being the limited edition or whatever is the same exact model as the cheapest OLED.
Yep.
It just has 1 terabyte of storage. And it has orange joysticks.
Yeah.
Right.
So I bought the 256 gigabyte model.
That's right.
And the second one that I bought and given to Tyler was the 64 gigabyte, the cheapest model. And, you know, they're the exact same console.
Exactly
he
the
just
same.
has to pop in a bigger SD card, micro SD card, and we're on the same exact level.
Which might I add, I would have hated it originally, but I love that Valve for the first launch. They said, this is probably not a good idea because I feel like we've kind of weaned this out by now. Like with iPhones and laptops, like you can't get a 64 gigabyte iPhone anymore. You know what I mean? Remember when you could get an 8 gigabyte? Like I think it was like iPhone 4, the cheapest was like an 8 gig or something crazy small.
Yeah, probably.
And then it was like, oh no, like 32 is the smallest. 64 is the smallest. Now 128 is the smallest. And back then, 128 was the Mac Daddy.
Yeah.
So it's funny how like what I like though is that Valve, despite that, this is 2022 we're talking about. Valve said, you know what? We're going to make a base model 64 gig. And we know that that's not enough storage. However, we also know that the price of micro SD storage is pretty freaking cheap today.
Yeah. You could get a 1 terabyte SD card and it'd still be the same, if not a little bit less than the 256 gigabyte model Steam Deck.
Now,
if
granted,
the cheapest one,
if you're really nerdy, techie, whatever, yes, internal storage drive is going to be better performing. Yeah. Right. Obviously, that's always going to be better. But if you're on a budget, micro SD slot, right? Buy the 64 gig model and just toss it. You probably have a micro SD card at your house.
Yeah.
Most people do. It's probably in your drone or it's in some other device that you don't use anymore.
It's in your Switch that you're now going to retire.
Right. It's in your Switch that you thought you were going to use, 512 gigs.
I've not even touched my Switch since I got the Steam Deck.
Exactly. So it's like, pop that bad boy out or spend 30. I think it's like 30. I'm actually going to look on Amazon right now. Yeah. What can you get for like $30? Let's see. I love how when I go
256.
When I go on
maybe 120.
Every time I go to Amazon, for whatever reason, the tab or the link that's saved in my history is tapeworm treatment for cats. So that's funny.
All right.
So I'm going to go
you always click it, so it's going to stay at the top.
It's always going to be at the top, yeah. Micro SD cards. Let's see. The first thing that comes up, Amazon Basics, micro SD. It is 128 gigabytes. It's a V30 card, which I think for Steam Deck is fine. I don't think you need a V60 or V90.
Yeah. What do I have?
$12.
It's ridiculous.
Guys, if you're our age, again, I'm going to say that. If you're our age, remember when Kyle got the what was it?
512.
What was it like? I think I have a 512 of mine as well. When Kyle got like the 8 gigabyte SD card for his PSP and it was like red.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. We're like, whoa.
Whoa. It was like a see-through red micro SD card.
And you're not even going to use all that.
You're not going to use all that 8 gigs. That's crazy. So yeah, guys, $12. And granted, it's Amazon Basics, but you know what? It's 100 megabytes per second, which I believe, be corrected if I'm wrong, I believe is fast enough. Let's take it a step further. You get a SanDisk Extreme micro SD V30, 128 gigs for $13. 50 cents more.
There you go.
Or a Samsung Evo micro SD 128 gig for $14. Less than $20, you can get 120 gigabytes of storage, which again isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, right? You're not putting Cyberpunk, Call of Duty, and GTA 5 right on your Steam Deck at once. But if you play indie games and let's say you put one of your favorite AAA titles, you're good. And then, you can step up from there and go to a 512, 1 terabyte, whatever. But, okay, 256 gigabyte, a PNY, 256 gig, $18. So SD storage is really cheap nowadays. So honestly, like if you find yourself on a budget and you can't quite afford the 256 or the 512 or 1 terabyte base storage model on the Steam Deck, just get an SD card. And guess what, guys? The SD card slot on the Steam Decks actually work. Both the Lenovo Go and the my ROG Ally SD card slot disassembled itself. It melted into oblivion. I can't even, I physically cannot stick the card in it anymore because of a recall.
That's
ridiculous. And if you know what I'm talking about.
Isn't it just because like the heat sink is
the exhaust is right next to the SD card slot, so it like deforms it and does a bunch of really weird. But if I plug an if I even try, before it refused to take a physical card, when I could still fit the SD card in my ROG Ally, Windows would just be like, the fuck is this? And like if you double click on it, like you go to the File Explorer and you go to your drives and you go to the SD card. If you double click it, it would just load. And then eventually the File Explorer would crash and then Windows would crash. And I was like, awesome, dude. Great. Lenovo Go, almost the same experience. I popped my 1 terabyte card into that. Mind you, I've tried different cards. It's not just the same card. Different cards. Same thing. It was like kind of wanted to work. Granted, the Lenovo Go one does work sometimes. Like every so often, it just won't show up in File Explorer. And I never take it out. Like an SD card is one of those things you don't really take out on a handheld.
Yeah.
Or a drone, on a drone you do. But you know what I mean? Like on a gaming handheld, you don't ever take it out because you're not transferring.
Yeah.
It's truly just being stored. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't show up. And the same principle, I double click on it and it's just like, and it doesn't load and it crashes everything. And I have to fully restart the Lenovo Go in order for my SD card to show up. Which, mind you, the base model of the Go is only 512 gigs, which isn't that much. And so, yeah, a lot of my games were on the SD card. Again, back to the thing we talked about earlier, what a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I know with confidence and certainty that when I turn my Steam Deck on, I don't even remember which games are installed where, because it just works. I never think about it. It lives. It just lives in there.
Yeah. And even if like for some reason you did have multiple SD cards, you literally unplug it, put another one in, and it's just like, oh, well, here's the games from this card. It'll just
and guess what?
Load them right up.
Software. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to the software. Hardware can be great. And I think hardware obviously is extremely important to like the interaction with the device. But the software is equally as important.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue is like we get a lot of people get hung up on the hardware. How fast is it? Oh, well, this is the benchmark numbers and this and that. Great. That's half the battle though.
Yeah.
That's half the battle. If I don't want to use it, I'm not gonna use it. I don't care how fast it can play Cyberpunk or how long or how good the battery life. I don't care. I don't care.
Like, I think a good way to kind of summarize it all is just like when it comes to the PC gaming space, at least, even like a gaming laptop, gaming computer, anything, all the handhelds, like the Steam Deck just requires the least like preamble when it's like, I'm thinking about getting this. I don't have to be like, you can get it, but you might want to, which model should I get? How much storage do I need? I don't have to sit next to them when they're booting it up and make sure they know how to work it.
It's the least amount of effort to play video games.
Yeah. And the least option, because even like the ROG Ally, like isn't there two different ones of like different power?
2 CPUs, yep. There's the Z1 and then there's the Z1 Extreme, which is a pretty noticeable performance difference if you don't know the difference, right? It's like, yeah, the price is much different, but the problem is the branding and the marketing is hard unless you know, right? Yeah. Most people are just going to buy the cheaper one, being like, oh, well, this one's only $500. I'm obviously going to buy that one. When in reality, the one you really want is the $700 one because the Z1 versus Z1 Extreme is a pretty substantial jump in performance from what I had. I think the Z1, the base model Z1, is closer in performance to like a Steam Deck at 1080p. The Z1 Extreme is the actual bump up. Now the Go, as far as I'm aware, the Go only comes in the Z1 Extreme, but other handhelds like Aya Neo or GDP or whatever, they use what is effectively the same thing as a Z1 Extreme, but it's not labeled. AMD, like the Z1 chip for AMD is like their marketed handheld chip, but it is, as far as I'm aware, is based off of another chip they already had that they put in laptops and everything else. So like Aya Neo and GDP are just buying off the shelf AMD mobile chips and putting them in handhelds. Whereas the Z1 was like AMD saying, hey, we designed this for a handheld power wise. It's usually power based because the batteries on a handheld are usually smaller than a laptop.
Yeah.
So it all becomes an efficiency race at that point. But, you know, obviously Valve took it a step further and we're like, hey, AMD, make us our own chip and put our logo on it while you're at it. Because we're Apple, apparently.
Of the gaming space.
I would say so. And speaking of Apple and gaming, Metal API is now available for game devs. So we shall see more and more games in 2024 available on Mac again because developers, it's going to be up to the developers to choose to do it. But I'm actually really interested to see what gaming would be like on an M2, M3, M4 MacBook.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thought to leave this one on. But anyway, a big shout out to Tyler and the Off Angle podcast for letting me use his setup. I figured, you know what, this makes the most sense while I'm here to set it up and kind of talk about handhelds. This was always the plan. Since I was planning on coming home, I was like, oh, we should talk about handhelds and do something fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I will.
This is mine.
Yeah, dude, show yours off, dude.
It's white. It's got the red transparent.
Yours is actually transparent or translucent.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is another thing I love about Steam Deck. There is such a kind of a good closing note. There is such a good tinkering community for Steam Deck.
Yeah.
For like swapping parts and upgrading and this and that. Like if you really want to be a tinkerer, which is I think more your speed than my speed when it comes to like this kind of thing, there's such a good community for that.
Yeah,
great
and
tutorials.
A lot of it's really easy too.
It's easier than you think. It's easier than you think. You know, like how many screws is it? Like 5? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
8 screws, guys.
Yeah, and the back plate I bought, like it comes with the screwdriver you need to take it off. It's literally just, you kind of pry it off, clip the new one on.
Screw it in.
That's easy. And the front is just a sticker. They make skins for it, of course, you know.
D-brand, LOL.
Basically.
Is it D-brand? Is that
it's not D-brand. It's all from this JSaw. Yeah. Shout out to them. The case, everything. Yeah.
I've been wanting to play with some of the JSaw stuff. I've heard nothing but good things. At first I was like, oh, they're just another, you know, whatever brand that makes stocks.
That's why I thought, I was like, I'll buy one thing. I'll see how it goes.
And then it turns out they're actually really good.
Yeah, they're real passionate about it. I think they got stuff for the Ally too. I don't know what.
I think they do, yeah. So anyway, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you guys so much. If you stay tuned this long, I don't know how long this is going to end up being, but you know, if you are watching it on my channel, obviously make sure to hit the like button and subscribe and all that jazz. You can follow me on X. Hit that bell. You can follow me on X, TikTok, and Instagram at XXIV_concept, 24concept, learn your Roman numerals. And then if you're watching this on the Off Angle podcast channel, if it does happen to go up on there, make sure to
follow us. Yeah, we're on everything as well. At Off Angle Pod, and or the Off Angle Podcast on YouTube, and then my personal one is at TADIAGO Tadiago. It's my personal X. It's really the only thing I use. So, but yeah,
that's been it. See you guys. Happy New Year. I don't know when this is gonna go out. Probably 2024. This might be the first video of 2024.
Okay,
which is pretty exciting. So let's start the year off strong. Stay tuned for the actual full review of the OLED Steam Deck. And yeah.
Peace, everybody.